No, it's not ramen you make at home. It's a Japanese ramen at a thing at the restaurant. So it is traditional. It's just not might not be a Spanish dish, so you don't think it's thing. You see, Snyder's
That's super
racist.
cool. I didn't even know. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that that was a thing.
Here we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome. For those of you who I'm yet to meet, I'm Fallon. I'm one of the co-founders and partners over here at boutique creative agency B-Dance, and I am positively delighted to be your host and moderator today for this panel. Before we get started, big shout out to Ace Virtual for bringing us all together to tackle these big, important topics. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's probably that as soon as we think that we know something, then it's going to change. And when it comes to culture in this new world, it can't just be set and then left alone. Today, I am joined by a panel of big-brained experts who are here to discuss the evolution of remote engaged culture. And I'm really looking to them to help us challenge the things that we think that we know, open our minds to new and exciting ways for now and also in the future. So this session is really interactive. So if you can, be sure to get in the chat. It also has a little bit of a language warning, so discretion is advised. So let's get started with getting to know our guests. Our first gentleman is the author of the #1 Amazon hot new book release, Engaging Virtual Meetings. He's been meeting virtually for over 35 years. Yes, 35 years. And he has produced over 4,000 virtual meetings and the only 100% live virtual conference in the training industry. Welcome to the party, John Chen.
I love that Fallon's got moves. What's up, Fallon?
Hey, mate. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Cheers.
Very exciting. And we have more people. Our next guest, he has dedicated the last 20 years of his life to developing new methods and models that upskill employees for peak performance. He's a reformed data scientist and currently serves as the L&D program manager for Microsoft Xbox worldwide. Welcome, Chuck Sigmund.
Thanks for that introduction, Fallon. I'm going to have to get you to change that so we don't highlight the 20 years. That makes me feel a whole lot older than I want to be.
Oh, like a fine wine, Chuck. Come on. It's important. And then last, but certainly not least, with over 20 years of experience in behavioral science, our next guest is pushing the boundaries and serving at the forefront of AR, VR, and really just anything VX. And he believes that, no, XR, and he believes that XR technologies will profoundly disrupt the way in which humans play, learn, work, and socialize. Welcome to the panel, Chris Madsen.
Thank you for having me, Fallon. Excited to be here today.
Thank you so much. And let's get started, guys, with a little bit of controversy. Okay, so where we want to get started is what we talked about is really this big tour of bullshit opinions. Okay, it's Tobo, it's time for Tobo, and it's the remote versus in-person debate. And John, I want to start with you because it's a polarizing topic, right? I think we discussed that Malcolm Gladwell recently got into the ring. And so tell us a little bit about that. And if you feel like it, tell us why he's wrong.
Malcolm Gladwell recently came out, right? As much as I like some of his other previous work, and came out and he bashed remote work. Everybody go to the chat and just say boo, right?
Boo.
Yeah, thank you. Right, and so these so wrong. Right, my whole life has been transformed by remote work. I've been trying to tell people for decades they wouldn't do it, and so, but now finally people are here, and I think remote work has transformed the work landscape. So I just don't understand where Malcolm Gladwell, a pretty smart guy, could take this part and bash remote work. Fallon.
And remote engagement in all its types, whether it's work or with people outside our organization or even our social networks, these virtual environments. Chris, what have you heard that is just a downright wrong opinion or an incorrect assumption about the world we're living in?
Oh, downright wrong assumptions. I would say, I think it's really just people don't understand that you can have an incredibly amazing experience virtually that in some ways, not always, but in some ways can exceed what happens in the physical space. I mean, it gives us so many different tool sets to play with that we wouldn't have in a physical environment. So I think helping people expand their awareness of what truly is possible, because I just think people just don't know.
Well, and I'm gonna follow on that, if I may, Fallon. Chris is spot on here. By any measure, any metric of productivity, we know that if you look just over the last 2 years of COVID time, we've actually seen productivity increase as a whole. And especially if you start to look, we had this conversation yesterday, if you look beyond the productivity of just you in your business life, right? If you look at productivity as a whole in your life, and we talk about work-life balance and how do we assess that and how do we manage that process. For myself as an example, I used to be your standard go in at 7 in the morning, leave at 4 in the afternoon. That left certain hours for work stuff, certain hours for home stuff. Now I may take 2 hours in the middle of the day and go pop off to the gym for a few hours and then meet with my colleagues who are in India, who are in Japan, who are in Costa Rica, who are in Europe. And we're matching up time zones better. We're all at that point where, gosh, you know what? I'm now energized. I'm excited. I've been able to take some time for myself, get a little bit of a break. And you can see what the productivity level has been, both in terms of actual output and innovation, which is a space that Chris really works in.
The collaboration tools, I think we can all admit, have accelerated so great since COVID that I wish I would have had these tools back when I was working in the physical office. And here we are. We've got it all now.
And Fallon, the gift, you said the gift that the pandemic gave us is that it advanced this information technology 7 years, right, Chris? And that's what's allowing us to do all this stuff now.
Yeah, and not to bash or not bash, that's the wrong term. Not to highlight some things that pre-COVID, Microsoft Teams. I work for Microsoft. I own Xbox L&D. Teams pre-COVID was nothing more than a glorified video teleconferencing tool. It had very few features. Then, as the beginning of the pandemic kind of came out, we said, oh, maybe we need to add a chat feature or such. You look at the Teams tool, you look at all of the other video conferencing tools that are out there on the market now, to Chris's point, the innovation in them that has happened in the last 18 to 24 months never would have happened in that time frame without some of these forcing functions, right? And what we've been able to do as a result of having these new tools with all of the integrations, with all of the innovation abilities, we can now collaborate in spaces that we never even envisioned 2 years ago.
It's so true. And if we think about engagement, right? If engagement is just, we talk a lot about employee engagement, and I know that Brittany is here, and so I'm interested to hear her thoughts and feedback on this in the chat. But if engagement applies to the discretionary effort of somebody and their willingness to go above and beyond, there's a lot of debate around making people productive, checking if they're engaged. But if someone's engaged, we now have more tools than ever to power that engagement and connection. But I feel like a lot of the debate is focused on stuff that was, quite frankly, a little bit of bullshit. Things like productivity tool tracking. We heard in the last panel about the mouse jiggler. What do you guys want to say about the mouse jiggler and all of this draconian productivity tracking?
Okay, fine.
John, I know you have words on this one.
Fine, I'll start. The mouse jiggler is already broken to begin with, right? Because we were just talking about, like, you need to, if you want to have a team, you have to have trust. And if you don't trust your people to work, then why are you tracking their mouse movements, right? Why don't you track something way more valuable, like their work output or something else like that? And then I love the other quote that came in there. I think it's Christopher said it. He goes, if we just spend that much energy that we do avoiding work in actual doing work, we would all be better off human beings, right?
Can I just say, it's so apparent when people are engaged or not engaged. in these collaboration platforms. Do you really have to get nitty gritty in measuring whether somebody's actively on their screen? You can tell just by their engagement level in those collaboration tools. And to your point, the output is ultimately what matters.
Yeah.
Talking
At
about
the end of the day, as both an sorry, Fallon, didn't mean
No,
to
you're
talk over
right.
you.
You go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, as both a manager and an employee, to me, what's important is, I give you a project, I give you a date, I give you quality that I want done. If you deliver that project with the quality I expect on the date I want it, I really don't give a damn when you get it done. If you want to sit in your pool for 4 hours in the afternoon and then come back at 3 in the morning and work on it till 6, why should I care? Right? As long as we're engaged when we need to have collaborative meetings, if we want to do a whiteboard session, that's all that really matters to me. Get the work done, get it done well. And we have seen without question that working from home, working remotely works for the vast majority of people.
And so much of it is about managing your own personal energy, working and optimizing your work style for a way that's going to help you be the most productive. But let's take that word for a second and just dismantle it. And I want to come back to you, Chuck. We've talked a little bit about how expectations have changed and that really the game has changed in terms of productivity. We're kind of measuring things, not everybody, but a lot of people are still measuring things in a way that's obsolete. I'd love to get your thoughts on how the definition of collaboration and productivity and how we measure it has changed.
So I think when and I know we're talking a lot about pre-COVID because COVID really was this thing that forced us into this new reality, right? And as we're hopefully slowly coming out of COVID, we can keep doing this. Pre-COVID, it really was about being face-to-face in a meeting room, sitting down, talking. That was collaboration. Not necessarily with the right people, not necessarily in the right energy space, if you will. And what I think we're finding is there are ways in these new environments to collaborate. And I'm sure Chris has a lot of experience in this. We talk about being co-located in a virtual space. And I don't just mean in a space like this, but in a virtual reality space where we can look at augmented reality images of things, for example, and share. Even if one person is in India and one person is in Costa Rica, we can do these things in a way that was never possible before. What that leads to is a whole range of new ideas because we're giving people the opportunity to really deep dive into the projects that they're working on in a way that works best for them.
Amazing. And let me go over to Chris then. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of engagement? Because I think you've got a really nice position on this.
Yeah, so, we're moving into some pretty wild places. When we're talking about fully immersive virtual reality, what we're really talking about, and I'm going to use a phrase that's true, but it blows people's minds, but it is true. We are teleporting our consciousness to shared digital spaces to interact with each other and the environment without having to worry about the laws of physics and any restraints, where we can literally do anything. It's like, I'm going to equip the boss with a magic wand. Are we really going to be meeting in that 4x4 boardroom? If we want to have a creative jam session, how are we going to change our environment to get those creative juices flowing? I mean, we're thinking way outside of the box here. The fact that I can be present with you, that VR is the only medium where I can physically reach out my hand and shake your hand. Like, there's a physicality to this, right? There's a physicality to virtual reality, and it creates experience. So what we're calling this is experiential education, experiential communication. We're leveling up as a human species. We've gone from speaking remotely to people by sending up smoke signals or putting petroglyphs on rocks to now evolving where we can be with each other wherever we're at in any environment in a physical way. Pretty impressive, and experiencing things, experientially, hands-on.
And if I can add to that, Chris, because I just had an experience similar to that. What's really beyond mind-blowing for me is to your point, we started meeting in this virtual space, right? And it was a virtual hospital. And then we teleported to another virtual space. You could never do, if the four of us were meeting in a conference room and I said, oh, we want to go and explore a hospital. Well, now we got to go plan the meeting. We got to schedule it. We got to go drive over there. Then we go to the hospital. And then we go, after we're at the hospital, we say, oh, now we want to go to a doctor's office. Guess what? I got to plan the meeting. I got to schedule. I got to make sure everybody's got count. We were in a virtual space and we said, oh, now we want to see the doctor's office. Okay, boom. Now we're in the doctor's office. It was mind blowing. That's
Instant
the kind of thing
ROI
we're talking about.
right there, my friend.
Absolutely.
ROI.
Absolutely.
And I love that. I want to build on that and bring John into the conversation. In the wise words of my beautiful father, money talks, bullshit walks. John, tell us a little bit about how this new world actually meant big business for you. Somebody who was thriving in that physical world BC before COVID. Take us a little bit on your journey, and then we're going to come back around on this new world.
Well, Fallon, all I know is I need to partay with your dad. But let me just kind of go along here. I'm the author of a book called Engaging Virtual Meetings here. But how did I get here? Well, I used to do team building, right? I actually used to do geocaching, was a face-to-face, and I used to teach team and leadership skills using a high-tech scavenger hunt. Then this little thing came around and screwed everything up, right? And I had like 15 canceled meetings in March of 2020. But I've been online for a long time. Right. For those who don't know, this is pre-AOL. It's when modems used to make noise. And then I wrote this book here in 2011. And I said, we should be doing this. We could meet and get real work done and save the travel and expenses, have dinner with our family at the end. But everyone goes like, that's a great idea, but here's a bunch of money and you need to fly to Orlando now. So anyways, I'm sitting in my office, nothing to do. Right. I don't make vaccines, but I do make virtual meetings better. So I put this class out and my intuition said, give it away for free. 5,000 people took the class. Publisher comes back and says, hey, do you want to write your second book? I'm like, sure. And the best joke now is like, Fallon, they didn't know how long this virus thing would last. So
Only
they made
2 weeks, John. Only 2 weeks. Don't worry.
That's right, 2 weeks. That's right. We'll all be back to work. So I rushed this book. I wrote the book in 9 weeks. It came out in October of 2020, and it hit the #1 Amazon hot new release. And now my entire life is transformed from face-to-face events, where I spend the majority of my time designing, producing, speaking at, and emceeing virtual meetings. Right. And Fallon, I'm going to give you my #1 tip for virtual speakers. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I don't know where it's going, but I like it.
That's the tip. The tip is stand up, right? And just to give, you want to see my life transformed. My life transformed, Chris, is this is really what's happening here. I got a big ass, right? Green
Chroma
screen.
key screens are the best. You can have so much fun.
And this is what's in front of my face now, Fallon. This is my reality every day, is what this is seeing. And that's how much it's transformed my life, Fallon.
I love that.
He's going to get up. Get up, everybody.
We're doing
lift your desk. Wait, here, we're going to play the music again. There you go. Fallon's like lifting.
Well, it's amazing. I love that. And it's magnificent. And it's really translated into real money for you. You know, lots of people sadly were negatively impacted by this, but there are new revenue opportunities. There are businesses that are thriving in this new world, and there's plenty of money out there for everyone. It just takes a little bit of opening of the mind.
All I could say out of the one thing the pandemic taught me, Fallon, was to fail faster. Everything that you see in this background is the result of the hundreds and thousands of failures of equipment that I don't use anymore. But everything that sits around on my desk now, it has a purpose for one reason or another.
It's perfect. And I love it. It's like the Starship Enterprise, and I don't know where to look. But I do want to make sure. Go ahead, Chuck.
I see Deborah's. Yeah, I see Deborah's comment in the chat about not having as nice of a setup as John. None of us do. Let's just start there. He's got an amazing thing. But again, even think about innovation there. You can now buy slide out additional screens for your laptop, right? They attach to the back. They basically either Velcro on or sticky tape on, and then you just slide them out. Now you got 3 screens on your laptop. Those didn't exist 3 years ago because nobody wanted them, nobody needed them. They all had their setup at home, right? And we talk about desktop PCs. How many of us actually have a desktop PC anymore? Not very many. And why not? Because we want to be able to pick up and go. One last kind of story to all of that, and I know I don't mean to be kind of taking over, but my son and his wife, who are in their early 20s, both work fully remotely. They're leaving next week to travel around the country for the next year. They're going to work from wherever they land. Can you even imagine that happening 2.5 years ago? They're relatively new in their careers. They've been with their companies for less than 2 years each. It never would have. They had gone to their manager and said, I want to drive around in a Volkswagen bus for a year and just work wherever I land. Their manager would be like, no, I need to see your butt in the seat. I need to know you're there, right? It's a completely different mindset.
It's a completely different mindset. I want to touch on one of those tips as well. If you're looking to bring the energy, and I think that's where John's recommendation is coming from a speaker perspective, is bringing the energy and being engaging. A little trick that I use is I get off my comfy productivity chair and I sit on a stool where I can't lean back, lean forward, or do any of that sort of stuff. And that is a little tip. That's a tip. I want to go to something and pull something out that Ron Shaw in the chat mentioned. He's like VR, infinite opportunity. And I'll loop Chris back in here like I promised. The world is changing. And it's not a case of us picking up our bat and ball and going to a new field. It's a completely new game. And so, Chris, can you talk a little bit more about what is VR really? Because I think a number of people, we think that we know what it is, but I'd love to hear you center us around what is it really?
Yeah. So what it's not, what people think it is they're thinking you're just looking at a screen through a headset, a giant screen. It is not that. It's a stereoscopic 3D experience that you can move through in 6 degrees of freedom. To look at the gum stuck under the virtual desk, I'm getting down, crouching down, and literally going under the desk physically to look at that gum. True physicality to this. We're also at this really crazy phase. It's a great time to get into VR because if I rewind the clock a few years, me being able to do stuff in those virtual environments was pretty slim pickings. But now we've developed tools where every single person can be a creator without knowing a line of code. It literally is giving you that magic wand to bring in 3D assets. Lowe's just released 500 assets, the Lowe's store, saying, if you want to create in the metaverse, we got 500 assets for you, free download right here. You better believe I was all over that. I'm downloading lawn chairs and plants and stuff, decorating out my virtual space, being able to pull in any kind of media instantaneously to show your PowerPoints on or a video, but why limit it to the size of a regular screen when instantly I can make it the size of a city building and turn up that spatial audio and just really evoke some true emotions from the participants. I mean, this is experience your product and your services, bringing things to life.
And just bringing it to life. And now a lot of people who are here today, we're events people. I can't tell you how many times we've thrown some kind of VX experience on the table and someone said, oh, it's too expensive. Tell us a little bit about your opinion on that, Chris.
It's $400 for a Quest 2. We just showed instant ROI that Chuck talked about. I'll tell you, the last time I gave my live talk right before COVID, I literally said to the audience, I can't believe I went through a missed flight. I got up at 4 a.m. to give a 7 o'clock talk. This is insanity. Why can't I just do this virtually? This is $400, but that trip alone would have cost like $3,000 for me to do all of that. Instant savings, one remote meeting can save you all that money right there. It's I don't know, that's cheap. Rewind the clock, it was a few years ago it was $2,000 for that experience. Now we're talking about that experience plus more for $400, and it's just getting cheaper and the hardware is getting more accessible.
So Chris, I want to tag on to that if you don't mind, Fallon, which is VR is waiting for its killer app. Like, electricity got its killer app, which was the light bulb. And I think meetings might be the killer app for VR, right? Because once people get quote unquote tired of any of these virtual flat platforms, one day we'll get enough people inside a virtual reality space. I hope that's it. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm looking forward to that.
I'm pretty convinced one of the killer apps is us, that we all be it to become creators and create whatever is coming to our mind. And we're at a place where we can do that in real time on a blank slate. Pick a topic, an hour later, I have an entire space built out around that topic. So the creators, making us all creators is just such a killer use case.
And there's two things I want to touch on here. One is, great point, Steve, in the chat. As we start to face this recession and with inflation, if we were spending $700 to feed each person over a week-long conference before, your point stands really well there, Chris. Massive saving, instant ROI to take things immersive and experiential. And then so many things here in the chat. When you think about going into other people's homes, I'd love to talk about this and scratch on it a little bit more and just what that could look like. Yeah. Chris and everybody jump in. When you talk about ourselves, give us some examples of what you see out there that for home and work application.
Okay. I'm going to jump into this one. First of all, to use VR for office applications of doing my regular office work, I'm sorry, we're not there yet. I'm not putting on a headset for 4 hours to do that. No. That's not how I leverage VR. But what is coming is the mixed reality applications. So now, and I see a lot of comments here about screens, right? So now I'm putting on a lightweight headset with very high resolution. I'm looking out into my physical living room, and I'm placing high resolution virtual monitors wherever I want. So if you want that 7 monitors, you've got those 7 monitors, and you're placing them geophysically wherever you want, and they remain there. They're persistent, right? So that, and this ability to be able to mark my words, very soon I'll be able to say, Fallon, do you want to come have that meeting in my living room, or do you want me to come into your living room? Because those headsets are scanning your environment, and they're turning your environment into a 3D mesh. So if you're coming to my living room, you're coming virtually to my living room. You're in virtual reality seeing my space. You're seeing me there as an avatar, and vice versa. I'm in my living room looking at my physical space, seeing you come in as an avatar. Overlaying of realities there, where we're now teleporting ourselves into each other's physical space. Here we go.
Amazing. And it's funny too, because some of us might be listening today going, wow, you are living in 2050, my friend. But no, the future is now. And if we think about going into other people's living rooms, I think about back to what John does. John, you spend a lot of time with other people's teams, right? Other people's families, and you go into their events and you're doing team building with people and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a little bit like going into other people's houses. If you think about what you've learned or you've seen over the last couple of years that's maybe surprising or challenged what we thought we knew about the way that people engage with each other, what would you share with us?
Well, I think one of the things is one of the keynote speakers about 10 months into the pandemic said something great at the end. And she said, "Thank you for inviting me into your home." And that alone, because what you're doing, it's really funny, Fallon. I actually grew up and I was a pizza driver in college. And as a pizza driver in college, when you do deliveries, you see 5 minutes of everybody's world, right? And in a night at a college town. And by the way, that's crazy. It's a little bit weird. But there's other piece around it. There's this that I think that's what this virtual piece has really done. We see now sometimes people's insights of people's lives. And I actually think some of it can draw us closer. That's why I say, you know what, your cat is fine. You know what, your kid actually should come and meet with you, right? And so that you can do these things, because that's our reality. So it should be that you can share that, and it's a piece of authenticity. Something that I've been chiming about for the last 2 years is the discovery of how important psychological safety is in a virtual meeting. And people said it was disconnecting us. I think it can bring us together. I think it's possible, and I've not only see it's possible, I've seen great examples of it where virtual meetings now can become closer connectors to us than actually traveling. So
amazing. Now, quick, everybody, get in the chat on this, because I just want to get a sense check. I love this idea of making this connection, this personal connection with people, maybe a little bit faster. I may have never invited people I work with into my house. Now, I mean, I'm here, my kids are here, my dogs, my cats. Tell us in the chat, professional or unprofessional? Because I still feel like this is a little bit of a debate. Personally, I love that when people feel safe enough to bring their whole selves to work. So let's get it in the chat, professional or unprofessional. And guys, what do you think? We've heard what John thinks. Chris, Chuck, what's your vibe?
So I want to follow up on something that John said, but kind of in a little different twist. I feel really great that this sort of environment has allowed us to get to know people at a deeper level, the people that we work with. I mean, we've talked about things. Oh, John's got kids, you've got kids, whatever. That's great. But to actually meet, I mean, I've now a couple of members of my team, they've had babies in the last 2 years. And I've now known the mom while she was pregnant. And then I got to see the baby from, day 6 till now. And the baby's starting to walk kind of thing, which is great. But the psychological safety piece that I want people to really think about and be aware of is we have team members who the video aspect of this does not work for them. Maybe they have anxiety. Maybe they don't want, there's a reason they don't want to invite you into their home, right? And they never would pre-COVID have said, Fallon, come to my home for dinner and we'll have our meeting at the dining room table for whatever reason. And one of the things that I think we need to be very careful of is respecting that as well. Because I know we have team members at Microsoft, for example, who do not turn on their cameras. And that's okay. That's accepted. And a couple of times people said, oh, Fallon, you need to turn on your camera. And it's like, no, she doesn't. If she's not comfortable doing that, maybe just today you woke up, you feel like crap, your hair's not done, you're still in your pajamas, but you're there doing the meeting, doing whatever, but you just don't feel comfortable being in that video environment. Great. We need to remember to give that grace to people as well.
I love that. And also thinking about, say, physical barriers. Chris and I talked about this a little bit and the new opportunity. In the previous panel, there was a great comment about team culture, collaboration groups, and things that sometimes have these ableist undertones. Chris, can you talk a little bit about the new world of engagement and the opportunities that are there for us?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it should be stated that experience is the glue that bonds for relationships, right? When you're having experiences together. And that's what this new paradigm of the metaverse, of virtual reality, it allows us to share experiences together. That's a really, really big deal. So this is how we see a lot of corporations using Engage. Initially, they might think that they're just going to use it to replace typical office work. Again, that's not the best use for VR right now. I remember back when I worked for Xerox Corporation, we used to pay big bucks for folks to come in and do team building, take us on ropes course, do these physical exercises in the office. Man, when you're in VR, that's a ropes course on steroids, because now you're flying helicopters over the surface of Mars and you're having team parties on a multi-million-dollar yacht floating around the islands of Greece with DJs and wine glasses falling from the sky. This is stuff that people talk about for 6 months to come up. I can't believe I had that experience. It also has an interesting psychological effect because it's very playful in VR. So we get, CEOs and stuff that drop in, and the first meeting I might have with them is in some crazy location, and they just burst out laughing. Brings out the inner child. I would argue that you get more real conversation in VR than you would do in a formal setting, because people are relaxed, they're in a different mind frame, they're at ease. And they're wearing an avatar skin, by the way, which also, back to Chuck's point, does indeed make people feel comfortable because they can kind of choose how they want to represent themselves. And that's very freeing for people and puts them in a much more comfortable space to socialize. So a lot of interesting pieces about all of that.
I love that. And this concept of play, John's in the chat making a really good point that there's been a lot of research in recent articles that say that the ability to play really forms those great connections and is the key to engagement. If we think about engagement, I want to take it a little bit back to work, but then also meetings. We've talked about it and the other panel talked about it. There's two things. One, it's this concept of quiet quitting. Have you heard about that on the internet right now? It's this new movement. Reddit is all aflutter with it at the moment, but people deciding to just not stop going above and beyond. And then the other great thing is about people noping out of meetings. Andrew talked about it previously, and John's doing it right now. But
John, come back, John. John, come back.
Real John, real John. But what you see him here is Andrew did it before, and John's doing it now. He's playing a video. John, tell us a little bit about the video and this whole people just not being engaged and drawing a hard line.
Yeah, this quiet quitting thing is just like that, right? We're talking about like people found all these new ways to not do work, and that was one of them, which was put a video, right? So I recorded myself in a meeting, and now I have it in here. Now I can push this button and pretend like I'm in a meeting. And a guy actually did it for like I think a quarter, like a whole quarter in a semester or whatever at college, and nobody called him out. And I think that's the teacher's failure to actually go back and engage, right, the student at some point and figure out that, you know, this guy's playing a trick on you. This quiet quitting, though, is not new. It is now just getting expanded, I think, by what's going on. People already, studies prior to pandemic said that 50% or more of your workforce is checked out. And that gets on to each of you. Like, if I want to inspire all of you to do one thing, is if you're the leader of a group or inside of a company, is to align your people, right, with your team, with what your company vision is. And if they're not there, they should leave, for crying out loud. That's actually, we did a whole thing on retention when I was at Microsoft. And one of the things that was killing people is that people were thinking about leaving 2 months to 2 months to 3 years before they actually quit. And so basically you've got these walking zombies in your company that are sucking up resources and pulling other people down. And that's what that quiet quitting is doing.
It's great. And Chuck, you must see this as an L&D expert. How much of ye olde multitasking do you have to deal with? And talk a little bit about it. And how do you tackle it?
Sure. So, you know, I'm sure all of us have had that experience where we have to take an e-learning course that we don't want to. Generally, it's a compliance course. And if you're like John or the rest of us who have more than one monitor, you set it over here on this monitor on the left, and it kind of plays, and you do your other work. And every once in a while, you reach over and hit the enter button so it'll go to the next slide, right? And you don't really engage with it. You don't really learn from it. And generally, if it's a poorly designed course, who really cares anyway? You just have to get the little thing at the end that says you finished it. So the entire process to beat that is, as John says, to create something that is engaging and challenges the learner, right? What we want to do is we want to create courseware that is not just this rote memorization, but puts them through scenarios, puts them through real life simulations. We have a course where we've created how to completely reinstall your Windows operating system. And if you make a mistake in that simulation, you fail and your entire hard drive gets melted down, basically, right? So we want to put that pressure on people, and we put a time pressure on there, just like you would in a real life example, right? And guess what? People don't just set that on the side and push a button. Now they're engaged. They're not doing anything else. So it's really about, to Chris's point, creating an experience that is as close to reality as possible. And I think my biggest takeaway from anything in L&D is make it challenging. People will rise to an occasion if you force them to work hard, right? John's point about quiet quitting. If all you do is say, John, every week you need to turn in this little report, or I need you to maintain this spreadsheet, within about 3 weeks, he's out of here, right? But if I say, hey, I want you to build a new algorithm that's going to identify all of the things that are changing this, give him a challenge that fits what he's interested in, he's going to be fully engaged and he's going to elevate to that.
I love that, and I 100% agree.
Give me that TPS report.
Need that TPS report, John. So as we start to wrap up, I want to make sure that we make time for Chris here, which is XR the antidote for this lack of engagement, or the way to create these experiences?
It is an antidote, not the antidote. It is an extra tool in our backpack to really VR can do things that no other medium can, and to leverage it appropriately is a great tool to have on board. You know, a lot of times we'll be doing hybrid events like this right here. You know, imagine if we had our social now in a virtual reality environment. I think that would be a really cool thing and elevate it to the next level. But if you're just talking to people like this, you don't need to put on a headset for that necessarily. If we're going to do a creative jam session, throw a headset on, because it's going to be quite an experience and really open the mind to be able to be creative, because you can pick the environment that you're doing that in and have some really special tools to do that creative work with.
Perfect. Now we've got just a few minutes left, so I want to move into our wrap up and a little bit of a lightning round. You've all given us a lot to think about, challenge some of the things that we thought that we knew. And for those people who've been inspired and want to start somewhere, I'm going to go around the horn and I'll call on each of you. What is the one thing that we could be doing differently? And I'm going to start with you, John.
The number one thing is right here. Figure out how to engage and interact with every attendee in every virtual meeting. And by the way, get up there. If you're listening to this right now, get in the chat. We want to hear what's the one thing you're going to take away from this talk. We want to see that chat blow up like right now. Right, Fallon?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. So that's a great point. Engage every member of the audience. The reality is there are always going to be people who don't want to come to your in-person event. They just don't want to. And so how do you reach them? They're still an important part of your audience. I love that. It's a great point. Chris, what is your one thing that viewers today could think about doing differently to thrive in this new world?
I think it's important to start paying attention to these new tools and opportunities coming down the pipeline. We hear about these things, but we really don't know about them until you try them out. So I think it's very important to get on and actually experience this. Most of you probably know someone that has a Quest headset or something, but to get in and really give it a taste of what it's like, because it's really hard to understand the opportunity if you haven't tried it, because it's such a new medium. This social VR experience is so different from what you're accustomed to. So getting your hands a little bit dirty and experience that. And once you do, you're going to go to bed at night. You're going to start spinning your wheels of how you can leverage those opportunities in many different business and educational opportunities coming down the pipeline.
It's amazing. And for those who want just a little bit of a taste, you're hanging around and doing something special a little bit later. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think I heard this is the first time we're doing this with the group that put this conference together. We're going to do a live presentation. I'm going to be as an avatar inside of Engage. I'm going to have a cameraman in there with a virtual camera that's going to be filming me out. So I'm going to be pulling out 3D objects and taking us to different locations and just showing you a little bit about what you can do on the fly spontaneously inside a space like that.
I can't wait for that. I'm super, super pumped. And to wrap us up and bring us home, Chuck, what's your one thing for the viewers?
So, yeah, Chris kind of stole it a little bit, but I'm going to expand on it as an L&D guy. Go out and learn about all of the tools, all of the innovation that is available. I guarantee that 80% of the people that are on this call right now are thinking, oh, that's stuff that's way out there, to your point, 2050, right? What we have seen in terms of new inventions, in new creativity, in new innovation just in the last 2 years, if you're thinking about what existed 2 years ago, you are 20 years behind. You need to start getting a real mindset around what is available, what can I do, what can I use. As I said, you look at Microsoft Teams, you look at AR, you look at the VR tools that were available 2 years ago. They have come so far in such a short period of time. Really get familiar with what's available to you and get to know the things that will support you in your space.
Amazing. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. You've been amazing. If there is one thing that I want us to all take away from, and one thing that I think that you've taught me, is that the evolution really is about creating those real experiences, because experience is the glue that bonds relationships. And that is what it's all about. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't leave here today without making a commitment to yourself. Get in the chat and tell us what you will be doing, that one thing that you'll be doing differently. And hang around, because we'll be joining you on the tables. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait till next time.
Absolutely.
Everybody
Thanks,
in the chat.
Fallon.
Put up for
Thanks, everyone in the audience. Woo!
Woo!
Thanks, audience.
and ride.